My name is Bella Ross, and last week I found out my father had already handed over the company I built, piece by piece, to my brother who hadn't been around in nearly a decade. That should have been the end of the story, but it wasn't where it started. I was 8 the first time I stepped onto one of our construction sites, while other kids were learning multiplication. I was learning how to read grading lines and listen to the hum of machinery settling into place. My father didn't believe in babysitters. He brought me everywhere: client meetings, site inspections, budget reviews over burnt coffee. He used to tell me, "Arden infrastructure doesn't run on concrete, it runs on grit, and you've got plenty of it." There was never a second option for me. I wasn't just going to join the company, I was going to earn it. I graduated top of my class in civil engineering, turned down offers from firms in Chicago, Austin, and San Diego, came straight back home to Seattle, and walked into Arden the next morning like I already belonged there. No celebration, no welcome speech, just a stack of reports and a system that barely worked. So I fixed it, over the next 17 years. I rebuilt operations from the ground up, moved everything from paper to digital, streamlined contractor rotations, renegotiated failing vendor agreements, and secured the largest municipal contract our company had ever seen. We grew faster than anyone expected, but my name was never on the door. People called me efficient, reliable, relentless, just never irreplaceable. And that was the mistake I didn't realize I was making. If this story is starting to resonate with you, even just a little, consider subscribing to the channel. Not out of habit, but because something in it feels real to you. And I'd genuinely love to know, where are you listening from right now? What's the temperature where you are? This is a fictional story, shaped with the help of AI to make it feel more vivid, more human. And what happened next wasn't loud, wasn't dramatic, but it was the moment everything began to unravel. I didn't know why that night stayed with me. Maybe it was the way my mother's message came through earlier than usual. Dinner at 7. Important. She rarely used that word unless something had already been decided. The house felt familiar, but not comfortable. The lights were a little too bright, the air a little too still. Declan moved easily through the space, opening cabinets, pouring wine, like he remembered exactly where everything was, like he hadn't missed a single year. I watched more than I spoke. My father asked about a project timeline. I answered. My mother refilled glasses. Declan told another story about somewhere in Europe, something about a coastal town and a gallery opening. Everyone listened. I realized then how quickly attention shifts when someone new walks into a room, even if they weren't really new, after dinner. I followed my routine. I cleared plates, rinsed dishes, turned the faucet slightly to the right so it wouldn't leak. Small things. Things you only notice when you've been the one holding everything together. "Are you okay?" my mother asked quietly. "Of course," I said. But my hands weren't steady, because something didn't sit right. Not the announcement itself. That part was clear. It was the timing, the certainty, the way no one seemed surprised except me. The next morning, I went into the office earlier than usual. There was a file I needed to review, a project I had been leading for nearly 2 years. Everything about it lived in my head, down to the smallest detail. But when I opened the system, it wasn't there. No draft, no backup, no trace. That's when the feeling from the night before came back. Not confusion, recognition. Something had already been moved, and I was the last person to notice. I didn't panic, not yet. I told myself it was a system delay, maybe a sync issue. That happened sometimes when large files were moved overnight. Still, something about it didn't match the way we worked. My father had one rule he never broke: never trust a single system. There was always a printed backup, always a duplicate somewhere safe. So I went looking for it. The archive room sat at the far end of the lower floor, colder than the rest of the building, lined with metal shelves and labeled boxes that held years of decisions no one talked about anymore. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead. Clara Whitman, our office manager, glanced up as I walked in. She had been with the company longer than I had. If anything moved in this building, she knew. Looking for something, she asked. "Just cross-checking a file," I said. keeping my tone even. She studied me for a second longer than usual, then nodded and returned to her desk. I moved through the rows methodically. Old zoning reports, contractor audits, closed bids, projects that had once mattered and were now just paper. I wasn't sure what I expected to find. Maybe a misplaced folder. Maybe proof that nothing had changed. Then I saw it. A black folder, tucked too carefully between two unrelated files. No label, no markings. I pulled it out. The weight of it felt wrong. Inside. The first page was stamped, signed, finalized. Equity Transfer Agreement. Arden Infrastructure. I read the numbers once. Then again. 72% transferred to Declan Ross. 18 retained by my father. The remaining shares allocated elsewhere. My name wasn't there, not in a clause, not in a note, not even as a placeholder. It wasn't a draft. It wasn't pending. It was done, behind me. I heard a quiet voice. I was wondering when you'd find that. I didn't turn right away, because in that moment, everything finally made sense. I turned slowly. Clara stood a few steps behind me. Hands folded. Expression calm, in a way that told me this wasn't new to her. She had known, not guessed, not suspected, known. "You've seen it," she said quietly. I nodded, still holding the folder. "Since when, April?" she replied. "Your father made it official then. April, months ago, while I was still leading projects, still fixing systems, still believing I was building something I would one day protect. And no one thought to tell me I asked." Clara hesitated. Not because she didn't have an answer, but because the answer wouldn't help. "He said he would." She said finally. When things settled, I let out a breath that didn't feel like relief. Settled. Or when it was too late to change anything. She didn't respond. I looked back down at the document. The signatures were clean, intentional, permanent. There was no space left for negotiation, no margin for misunderstanding, for a moment. I imagined what it would look like to react the way people expect. Anger, raised voices, demands. But none of that would change what I was holding. So I closed the folder, carefully. I slid it into my bag. Not as evidence, not yet, but as something I needed to understand fully before I decided what came next. Clara stepped aside as I walked past her. "Bella," she said softly. I paused, but I didn't turn. "I'm sorry." I considered that for a second. Then I kept walking. Because apologies, no matter how sincere, don't rewrite documents already signed. That night, I didn't sleep. The numbers stayed with me. 72%, 18, 0. Not confusion anymore. Not even disbelief. Just clarity, and by morning. I knew one thing for certain. If they had already decided my place in the company, then it was time I decided what to do without it. I sent a message before sunrise. "Dinner tonight. Everyone should be there." My mother replied within minutes. Faster than usual. "Of course. I'll cook. Your father will be home early." I arrived exactly at 6. The same front door. The same quiet hallway. Nothing had changed. And that was the problem. Declan was setting the table when I walked in. Sleeves rolled up like he belonged there. My father sat in his usual chair, reading. My mother moved between the kitchen and dining room, avoiding my eyes. I didn't greet anyone. I placed the black folder in the center of the table and opened it. No one spoke. Declan looked first. The color drained slightly from his face, but he said nothing. My mother covered her mouth. My father adjusted his glasses, leaned forward, and scanned the page. "You're misunderstanding what this is," he said calmly. "No," I replied. "I understand exactly what it is. It's for the future," he continued. "The company needs to evolve. Declan brings a different perspective." Perspective. I repeated, "Is that what you call it?" My voice stayed even, but something underneath it sharpened. 17 years. I said, "I kept this company running when contracts fell through, when systems failed, when we didn't have the cash to cover payroll. I rebuilt everything you were about to lose." My father didn't interrupt. And you decided I wasn't even worth a conversation. Declan shifted in his seat. Bella! I didn't ask for, you accepted it. I cut in, not raising my voice. Silence settled over the table. My mother stepped closer. No one meant to hurt you. I looked at her. Then why does it feel like I was erased? No one answered. I closed the folder and picked it up. As of tomorrow, I said quietly, I'm no longer part of Arden Infrastructure. My mother's breath caught. You can't just leave. I met my father's eyes. I'm not leaving, I said. You already replaced me. Then I turned and walked out. No slammed doors, no raised voices, just one chair left empty at the table, and for the first time in 17 years. It wasn't mine to return to. If you believe I did the right thing by walking away instead of accepting being erased from something I built for 17 years, leave a 1 in the comments. Sometimes choosing to leave isn't weakness. It's the only way to keep your worth intact. 2 days passed without a single word from anyone at Arden Infrastructure. No calls, no messages, no attempt to explain or fix what had already been decided. So when my phone lit up that Wednesday morning with Clara's name, I almost didn't answer. I'm not with the company anymore. I said the moment I picked up. I know, she replied. But you should come in. Quietly. Conference room B. I hesitated. Then I grabbed my coat. The building felt different when I walked in. Quieter. Like something had shifted beneath the surface. My access card still worked. That alone told me more than anyone had said out loud. Clara met me near the stairwell and guided me down the hallway without speaking. She stopped just before the conference room and nodded toward the glass. Inside. Declan stood at the front of the room, holding a remote. A presentation glowed behind him. Everhaven Development Proposal. My chest tightened. He clicked to the next slide and began speaking with calm confidence, outlining timelines, budget allocations, phased implementation strategies. Each detail delivered like it was his, but I knew every word. I'd written them. 2 years of work, late nights, revised models, negotiations, projections, every piece of it lived in that presentation, and now it didn't have my name on it. Declan moved through the slides smoothly, like he believed in what he was saying, like he believed it belonged to him. In the corner, my father watched, nodding, not questioning, not correcting, approving. I didn't walk in. I didn't interrupt. I stayed exactly where I was and watched until the final slide faded. Then I turned to Clara. Do we have backups? I asked quietly. She nodded. Everything. Original timestamps. Stored on your server. I exhaled slowly, because in that moment, I understood something clearly. They thought I had walked away empty-handed, but they had just made a mistake they couldn't take back. I didn't go back inside after that. I left the building the same way I entered. Quietly, without anyone noticing. The air outside felt sharper, colder, like something had been stripped down to its truth. At home, I opened my laptop and pulled up the original Everhaven files. The folder was exactly where I left it, untouched. Every version, every revision, every note I had made over the past 2 years sat there in perfect sequence. I opened the earliest draft. My name was on it. Creation date, 17 months ago. Author, Bella Ross. I opened the most recent version. Still mine. Then I pulled up the presentation Declan had used. Same structure, same phrasing, same layout down to the smallest detail. Even the color palette hadn't changed. This wasn't inspiration. It was replication. I sat there for a long moment, staring at the 2 screens side by side. Not angry. Not yet. Just certain. I began organizing everything. Exporting files, saving metadata, documenting timestamps, building a record that didn't rely on memory or interpretation. Facts only. When I finished, I opened a new email. Subject line, Intellectual Property, Everhaven Project. Recipients, Declan Ross, my father, legal. I kept the message simple, for the record. The Everhaven development plan and all associated materials were created solely by me. I was neither credited nor consulted regarding its current use. Attached are original files with timestamps and version history. No accusations, no emotion, just evidence. I hovered over the send button for a second, not because I was unsure, but because I knew exactly what would happen next. Then I clicked send. The message left my screen without hesitation, and with it, whatever silence they thought they had secured, because I hadn't left the company to disappear. I had stepped back just far enough to see everything clearly, and now, I was done watching. I didn't schedule anything immediately. I gave them time, 48 hours, not as a threat, but as a window, enough for them to respond, to correct it quietly, to acknowledge what they had done before it became something bigger. No one replied, no message from my father, no explanation from Declan, not even a brief acknowledgement from legal. So, on Friday morning, at 10 o'clock, I stopped waiting. I opened my drafts, reviewed everything one last time, and added the final recipients. Northbridge Development, their legal counsel, project directors, financial oversight. The subject line didn't change. Intellectual property violation, Everhaven. The body stayed the same, clear, precise, verifiable. I attached the original files, timestamps, version histories, a short note explaining authorship and lack of consent. Then I sent it. No countdown, no hesitation, by early afternoon. The first response came through Clara. Northbridge has withdrawn from the project. I read the message once, then set my phone down. Everhaven wasn't just another contract. It was the project that anchored the company's next phase, the one used in every presentation, every projection, every future plan. Without it, the structure they were building around Declan had nothing to stand on. Within hours, the effect started to ripple. A supplier paused negotiations. A subcontractor requested revised guarantees. An investor asked whether leadership had changed. No one said it directly, but the question was clear. Who was actually in control that night? My phone rang again. My mother, Bella, she said, her voice unsteady. Things are not good. I didn't interrupt. Your father hasn't said a word all day, she continued. Declan's locked himself in his office. No one knows what to do. I leaned against the counter, listening. We didn't think it would go this far, she said quietly. I closed my eyes for a moment. I didn't make it go anywhere. I replied. There was a pause on the other end. Then come back. She whispered, Please, help fix this. I took a breath. No, I said calmly. I'm just not going to be the one holding it together anymore. And this time, I meant it. I didn't expect the next message to come from Declan. Cassidy, please, just one conversation, anywhere you want. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. The tone was different. No confidence, no assumption, just hesitation. I replied with a single line. Tomorrow, 8 o'clock, Marlowe Cafe, back patio. It wasn't neutral ground. It was the place near the first site I ever managed on my own. The one that finished early, under budget. The one that made people start saying my name in meetings instead of just referencing the team. When I arrived, Declan was already there. No suit, no presentation. Just a paper cup in his hands, fingers wrapped too tightly around it. He stood when he saw me. Thanks for coming, he said. I didn't sit right away. I looked at him for a moment, measuring something I hadn't needed to before. I'm not here for a conversation, I said. So don't waste time. He nodded quickly. I know. We sat for a second. Neither of us spoke. Then he exhaled. I didn't understand what I was stepping into. He admitted. The presentations looked right. The numbers made sense. But the systems behind it, I can't hold it together. I didn't respond. The contractors are pushing back. Finance flagged inconsistencies. Northbridge pulling out. That wasn't supposed to happen. It wasn't supposed to be yours, I said quietly. He flinched. Just slightly. I know, he said. Silence settled again. Then he looked at me directly. But you can fix it. I held his gaze. Why would I? Because people still trust you, he said. And because, whether you admit it or not, everything there still runs on what you built. I reached into my bag and pulled out a single sheet of paper. I placed it on the table, face down. Flip it over. He did. His eyes moved across the page slowly. 40% equity, board voting seat, full operational control over Everhaven, final authority on project and financial decisions. His expression changed. That's a lot, he said carefully. I leaned back slightly. So is losing everything you just inherited. He didn't argue. I stood. You have 48 hours. I said, those aren't requests. They're terms. He looked up. And if we say no, I picked up my bag. Then you'll learn how to explain collapse without me. I left before he could say anything else. Because this time, the decision wasn't theirs to make first. They didn't wait the full 48 hours. By the next morning, an email arrived from the family's legal office. They were ready to meet. I walked into the room at exactly 2 p.m. No small talk, no coffee, just silence and a stack of documents waiting at the center of the table. Declan sat on one side, quieter than I had ever seen him. My mother beside him, hands folded tightly. My father at the head of the table, reading through the agreement like the numbers might change if he looked long enough. I didn't sit immediately. I've updated the terms, I said, placing the folder down and opening it. 40% equity transferred, board seat, full operational control of Everhaven, final authority on execution and budget. No one interrupted. Declan spoke first. I've reviewed it. I agree. My mother lowered her eyes. Then I looked at my father. For a moment. He didn't move. Then slowly, he reached for the pen. No speech, no apology, just a signature. The lawyer nodded. The agreement is now binding, and just like that, everything shifted. I walked out of that room no longer an employee, no longer an afterthought. I walked out as someone they could no longer ignore. 3 months later, Arden infrastructure looked different. Clear systems, transparent decisions, no more assumptions disguised as leadership. Everhaven reopened under one condition. I led it. The email confirmation was short, but it said everything. They didn't trust the company. They trusted me. One evening, a package arrived at my office. Inside was an old sketch I had drawn years ago. A small house, uneven lines, a note on the back in my father's handwriting. You were always the one building. I was just too late to see it. I placed it beside the original Everhaven plan, not as proof, not as victory, just as a reminder. I didn't win by taking anything back. I won because I never stopped being the one who built it. I learned that being loyal and being invisible can look the same until the moment it costs you everything. I gave years of my life believing hard work would naturally earn its place. But systems don't protect you unless you understand them. And people don't always value what quietly holds everything together. Walking away wasn't about pride. It was about clarity, about knowing when to stop fixing something that no longer respects you. If you were in my place, would you stay and fight from within? Or step back and let the truth reveal itself? What matters isn't just what you build, but whether you protect your voice in it. If this story made you pause, even for a moment, let me know where you're listening from. And if you believe stories like this can help someone else see their own situation more clearly, consider subscribing, liking, or sharing. One small action from you might be exactly what someone else needs to find their strength. This story was fully created and produced by our team. We do not copy or borrow content from any other channel. Thank you for staying with us and listening until the end.